madume ke sa Africa or moshate ko mogolo moshate kwa unpopular opinion. Ke try jalo moshate kwa Bantu Soul Society. Yes, we're at unpopular opinion. Next conversation with Mkulu Zamalek Giza. We're going to be looking at the Black Roots Science, the teachings of Mudimunchu, and stuff emanating from that, the 12 tribes of Shabazz, the protocols of the elders of Shabazz. A couple of things that emanated from that. The other day, somebody, actually about a month or two, somebody was like, why are you not teaching about the Black Root Science? Why are you not teaching about Black Root Science? Have you read that book? Do you know it? Why are you not teaching about that? I said to him, I read the Bible and I don't teach about it. So it doesn't mean to say because you have read about something, you must go around teaching about it. So I read the Bible in 5 languages. Ka Sepedi, ka Swahili, ka Amharic, ka English, ka Gi'ez.
Don't forget the Hebrew.
Yes. So now, it doesn't necessarily mean because you have read this thing, then you must go and advocate it. We advocate what is relevant. We read a whole lot of things. I've read Mein Kampf, Hitler. But I don't see how it fit into this thing. You understand? So, Mkulu, I know you've also read Black Root Science, and I know that you are familiar with the teachings of Mudimunju. What is your take on Black Root Science as a book?
Greetings to everybody. Greetings, Moholo, Tau.
Yeah.
Greetings to the people who are listening. For me, when we talk about Mudimunju, I see someone who got initiated in our tradition as Batswana. Bahotla, Morolo, because Utswa Kobakhatle. So he's initiated in the system of Bakhatla. And he tried to incorporate it with the Fat Muhammad and Fat Wallace for others who research the name.
Wallace Muhammad.
And Elijah Poole. Elijah Muhammad.
Yes.
So he's combining all those teachings. Because Elijah Poole, God his Honorable Elijah Poole, got his teaching from Honorable Fat Wallace. Fat Wallace, who was familiar because he was from Syria.
Master Fat.
Yes.
They got him Farad Muhammad.
Yes, Farad
Muhammad,
yes.
The one who initiated him.
Yes.
He was from Syria.
Yes. So he was from Syria. He came with ideas and oral stories from Syria that are far away from what we can call Islamic from our people in diaspora, the way they can learn it. That exactly in Ethiopian, when they talk about Exebrius creating everybody, Exebrius, when he created black people, he forgot. That is why they have a black skin. That's what has been said in their ascension. And then when he created other skins, they became moderated because he was carefully watching to what he was, the same thing he was doing as a creator. So it's the same stories. The story of the Black Roots, it's incorporated with stories of the Shabazz people, with the stories of little bit of numerology understood by Batu. So some other people will take all those stories and make it to one. That is why we get the 144 elders became the governance and the administration of the same system that is so important in the Black Roots, because it traces itself from the origin of making importance towards the 144,000 who were chosen children from Israel in Revelation. So much of it has what we call correlation to Islamic understanding, Judaic understanding, Islamic understanding, Christianic understanding. They are embodied what we can say tried Abrahamic understanding, even the creational story where everything emanates from the water. Because Africans have different stories to tell about, even the Botswana people. What Mudimunju will relate.
No, actually what you're making a very wonderful summary of that, which is what we call religious syncretism. They have syncretized different tradition of different religions. Like you did already mention, the 144,000 is coming from New Testament. The 12 tribe concept come from Israel, although they call them the 12 tribe of Shabazz, which the tribe of Shabazz is come from the nation of Islam, which Elijah Poole or Elijah Muhammad, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he wrote it in that book, Message to the Black Man. What is so funny is that an Arab become a teacher of a black man and teach him about the Arab religion, and they say it's a black man's religion. You know, it's the same thing as this thing people have been celebrating lately, that Putin is coming up with a picture of a black Jesus. And I'm thinking, no, this is just a strategy to keep us in slavery. You know, Putin might be a dictator in Russia, he's still a white man and he's still a Christian. Actually, ever since the rule of Putin, the Russian Orthodox Church has occupied a center stage, which is still Eurocentric manifestation of Christianity. So it is very suspicious when a black man who have a non-black man as a teacher to teach him about a non-black religion, and they paint it black. Like most missionaries, they contributed in the formations of this African version of Christianity, your AMEs and so forth, where some white teacher came in and started to say, this is the religion of the black man, which is not. But he's selling it to you because he's selling emotions to you. You have emotional attachment to it. It's our thing. So it is true that the Black Root Science, one, my total summary of it is that it's one of the typical religious syncretism where tradition, Jewish tradition, Christian tradition, and even metaphysical tradition, because he's so much big in numbers, numerology.
Yes.
He's putting numbers into so many things, you know, the number of the stars. You talk about this concept of 1 billion, 8 million years, 1 billion, 8 million stars. That is equivalent to all the people on earth, or the original people. You start to talk about the lifespan of 7,000 years and so forth. But in my study of him as a person, I understand he stayed in the United States until 2008. And then he said he was sent there by the elders of the Botswana. You are right, you said he come from the Botswana, hence the name Mudimunchu, which is basically saying black god.
Yes.
And I also have a problem with that anything black, you know, black god is always a poor imitation of the white god. Black Jesus is always a poor imitation of the black Jesus. Once you start to say something, say black this, you know, I'm the black Ayatollah. That means it's a poor imitation of the original Ayatollah, the real Ayatollah. See, so when you say the black god, it means you are the poor imitation of the white god, and therefore you're still going to bring the tendencies of that which you are imitating into this space. So because you are imitating the white god as a black god, so that is why those elements of the black god, of the white god, are here. The 144,000, the numerology, the Greek metaphysics, the Syrian mysticism, and so forth.
Yes, Mkulu, you know, when you talk about imitating the ideology of a deity and then calling yourself Mudimu Munchu, it's to have an idea of Christianity and Judaism or Islam. That goes back to the numerology that is used there. Truly, there's 144, or we can say 144. We can get 1,440 as the minutes of the day, and day and night, combine as a whole, calculating them. But all those can place unanimously with human understanding that the humans, they have 144,000 aspects that are made into 33rd degree of the colon bone layer. That when a neural nervous system float into you, they float in that way. So he play in that system because that's what is taught in the Bantu, to understand all those things. These are numbers they will throw. And the numbers they will throw are same numbers that we can find in Egypt, like the number 1.8 billion. The number 1.8 billion, we can get it in the calculation of the Sirius star. So this is the number. When they say interlight years of the Sirius star, you get 1.9 billion. For now, human civilization haven't reached to that, to calculate that because of the limits. But That number, we can still find it in Egypt, in Sumeria, being recorded with Cyrus or Sobdet when you go to Egypt. Close to it, because it's a number that can make you reach there through the light years. And the same things, which means these are people who take African knowledge system and integrate it or marry it with Western ideologies, where they will use these Western ideologies to relate these African ideologies. Like the way we talk about John Bite, like the way we talk about the great elders who exist in Africa, who created Africology or African theology. This African theology created a space where we need the God of the European in order to justify what we are doing. And what we are doing, it is far away from the ideology of religion, but it is closely related to astrology, closely related to astronomy, closely related to natural environment system. Like when we calculate a further system of building civilization, the civilization of Mesopotamia and the civilization of Egypt, to the civilization of Southern Africa, to the civilization of Maya in Southern America, to the Northern America, going to the Asian lands of the Buddha Marduk, Marete, and going all around, calculating it, all its system, and making geometrical angles, we get 144,000 degrees, all of it being combined. And then we need to break those degrees into some simple form where we can understand. Even you can use a chat GPT or any form of AI to narrate such a system. In order to navigate it, it will give you 144,000, or either it will give you a proximity of that number in order to get you close to the understanding of this map. That this is a language that can be played in our real world, but it has been used as a religious language. So Mudimu Mucha, he was so impressed by the fact, because they are in America. Pardon for me, or those who will feel offended. They're in America, they grew up in the Christian system, they grew up in the Islamic system. So they were taught only thing that is divine is the Islamic system. So they say 144,000, it is a sacred number, because they don't understand how it's interplayed in our life. As same as they will talk about the 50,000 chariot of fire in the Black Roots that came to save the Haji or the Mhat. The Haji, the one who knows all the languages, the one who can speak everything, or the Hajdi, the way they will call it, the master teacher. This master teacher, Fat Mahomet or Fat Wallace, became that same master teacher for them. Elijah Poole, known as Elijah Humet, became that same master teacher. So these same people, they are claiming the African system, because we can get the Haji in Bavenda. Haji being a leader and a community leader of Bavenda Babalembe. So these are words that are used to correlate with African and religious idea, but they don't create aspect where you can utilize them in your daily life.
Yeah. So
because it's like terms, the way sophistry that is used by Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, where they cannot explain for us how this God is applied in our life, yet we need to respect this God.
Yeah. So basically, it talks to Black traditions. You see, there is a African tradition, there is a Black tradition. There is a Black culture, there is African culture. You know, jazz, reggae music, blues, they are Black culture. They're not necessarily African culture. They don't originate from the continent of Africa, but they are Black.
Yes.
So, and they are not even articulated in any of the African languages. So when they say Black root science, it's incorporating things that Black people in America are doing, like Black Nation of Islam. Is a Black brand of Islam. Just like you had the West African brand of Islam called Baifal. of the dreadlock Muslims in Senegal. And then they incorporated elements that come from the Black Hebrews in America again, something that does not originate from the African continent. Although all of these black things, they claim origin or affinity with Africa, but you can't point anywhere in Africa in particular where they come from. The black Christians, those traditions of black Christians, black Muslims, a nation of Islam, and so forth. So, and this help us to distinguish between a black culture, which is an African culture developed in the Western Hemisphere, it is outside of Africa, which is not the same as African culture, because there is no African culture that speaks English. There is no African culture that speaks European language. Every African culture have indigenous African language to express it, because the language is a carrier of the people's concepts, ideas, and principles. So their ideas and their principles and their concepts are in their language. So that is why we say ancient wisdom is in the ways that we have forgotten their meaning. So if we recall those meaning, we're recalling the ancient wisdom. So these black cultures of religious syncretism, the one of black root science, the one of Mudimunju, it becomes suspicious when he said the elders, because he said that in the book, the elders send him to America, which is the Botswana, the elders of the Botswana, and which also refer to Botswana as a tribe. Botswana is not a tribe. You say he come from the tribe of Botswana. Botswana is not a tribe. It's a nation. It's a big nation, you understand? We sub-nations underneath. Even
the Zulu families,
the same thing with all
they sub from the Botswana nation.
Exactly. So it becomes, for most people, when they want to give legitimacy to their teaching, they say, I learned it from the elders, or I learned it from a great Sanusi, or a great master, or some griot, or somewhat. You can even refer to the Dogons, although you never met the Dogons, or you can say to the Botswana, although you never been initiated in that, because what you are saying, if it comes from the elders of Botswana, we must still find it among the Botswana today. We're not talking about a extinct knowledge, a dead knowledge. We're talking about a living knowledge, which is a living organism, that it can still be traced, even within the language or within the tradition. Now, once you start to come and say, you tell us of creation made of 7 days, when no African creation story talk of creation in 7 days, or even in mathematical numbers, there is no such thing. There's no, the Zulu cosmology, the Pedi cosmology, the Swati cosmology, none of them talk of a God who created the earth in 6 days, and on the 7th day, he get tired and he had to rest. The very ideas of God who rest, get tired, they're all non-African. So when you bring in and start to say, oh, I learned this thing from the elders, you either saying these elders of yours were already converted by teachings of Farad Muhammad, because there are largely a lot of teachings of Farad Muhammad there. They were already converted by the teachings of Ben Ami, of the Hebrew Israelites, or they were already, he's even talking about the true teachings of Jesus in Black Root Science. That
Mukulu, when you talk about the elders who came with such sciences, Fat Wallace, I meant to say, he had to meet Drew Ali's students. Drew Ali is someone who came with ideas of integrating, the Moorish idea,
the noble one,
integrating ideas of European Judaism, Christianity, Islamic from Asia, Middle East into black identity. So he's one of the people who embrace that in a proper academical form. There's even some of the books that he wrote in order to exaggerate such ideas. So these ideas are only exaggerated in order to display closer relation to white supremacy. Because in one of the European proverbs that I've learned through studying theology is that they use the word called a man who doesn't know God is a fool, or a man who says there's no God is a fool. So in African traditional studies, it gives a chance to study everything all around, meaning the whole entire holistic of the existence of humanity, astrologically, earth-wise, atmosphere-wise, geologically, and all its spheres. And then with that precision of giving its authority, it makes sure to us to view the world holistically. But now, since the European, they view the world holistically through God, they needed someone always to view whatever scientific study, whatever medicinal study, whatever social study, whatever psychological study, to have what we call God into it. That is why Catholic became the center of education. So majority of the inheritance in America, it is based on the center of institutionalized views of the Catholic through the Protestants. Because the people who get what we call liberation or land of the free, who fight for the freedom of America, they were Protestants to the Catholic who are emanating the Catholic rituals in their own perspective. So it doesn't mean these people were outside from the religious views of Catholic. Hence why we get Mudimu Mucha, when he goes that side, he had, yes, Mudimu Mucha. He had to emanate the Islamic faith, or what we call Nation of Islamic Faith, or the third pet centers, before they will call themselves that without going to their history. All those things that he needed to emanate, he needed to talk about the Shabazz. The Shabazz had interest in the slave trade. We can get the Shabazz interest from the Wallace family, who were descendants of the Shabazz family in Africa. And the Shabazz, we can get them in the Shaka tribes, who are descendant of the Bandunian in Syria, Iran, or Mesopotamia in day and age. So all those descendants, they had correlation and relation with the European, who have already established what we call America. They sell an idea of slavery as a best economic, because we can get that slavery, chattel slavery in Europe. It traces its origin from the same Shabazz, all these families who had relation from South Arabia, who inherited and conquered Africa or North Africa, and share the slave trade cooperation to the Europeans. So they needed what we call a space. We can get Sulman Ayuru Uhur or Ahuru Sulman Iyulu, who became one of the people who wrote letters to the chattel slavery controllers in order to liberate him. Such ideas of the Shabazz came with him in that community of the slaves, or so-called black people Bantu in America. It came with him in these ideas because he's from a descendant, the Wolof bloodline, who controlled slave, and he got to be mistaken as a slave because he had a dark skin, through them in what we call having family affairs within the Bantus and creating the admixture or the descendancy. So that is why the Shabazz could relate to person who's in America or a person who have lost their tradition, because it has a remnant of African ideologies through these, when we can explain the Tipi-Tipu, who were part of the relation of the character Sulman of the Wolof. That is how the Black Root Science was created. It is created in adapting the nature of Islam in Africa, known as Sufism, and creating oral stories, traditional stories like Shabazz, the great eagle. Because the word Shabazz means Shah, meaning the eagles, Baz, meaning the great or high, or the house in Hebrew, when we say the bar. So that is why they say Baaz, meaning the house of the eagle, the Shah, Sha'al or Sha'an in cuneiform Arabic language. When you go to Syrian language or Syria, they will speak such words to identify the eagle. That is why in Egypt, they will say Sa-shu or Sha-su. We have heard of that word. The followers of Heru, the followers of the eagle, meaning that same eagle is the same in admixture of people who inherited a different language, and they will identify ukos, what we'll know in Zimbabwe as Hengwa or Hengu for the Shona, Tonga, the people. And in our language, we'll say ukos. And in some other people will say tanguzi. These are the words in the Bantu they will use. So the word Shabazz come from that. So they've created a space like that where they can express what we call synchronize, as you have said it, religious ideas.
Okay. The next part, because the idea is to dissect some aspect of the book, so it will help to do them in portions.
Yes, sir.
So the next part is the 10 initiation system, which also, when I'm observing from Black Root Science in relation to the Botswana initiation system, what they got right is the 10, which they had 10, as I did mention that Botswana have 10 initiation system, Mepato Elishum, Botswana, which I did articulate some of them earlier here, even Mepato Yabongaka, all of that, right? So that is one thing they have. But what they have there, they only, in the Black Root Science, the initiation, that 10-stage initiation system, it's only focusing on the child, a development of a child. It's not focusing on the initiation of the society, because with the initiation process, everyone in the society partake in initiation one way or the other. Whether it's as the defense, like we're talking about the initiation that is dealing with defense, or whether it's the one that is dealing with farming strategies and food security, or whether it's the one that is dealing with crafts and technology, whether it's the one that is dealing with security of the society itself. So what they did have or got right there, because here we're engaging a book that is one based on a fusion of different traditions, but also that has dishonestly begun by saying this was handed down by the elders of the Botswana, because this then presupposes that the elders of Botswana have long incorporated Nation of Islam teachings of Fard Muhammad into Setswana. They have long incorporated the teachings of Ben Ami. They have long incorporated the teachings of Bo Malik York, you know,
the Drew Ali,
yes, Noble Drew Ali of the Moors and all of that. And therefore, it is the same thing we were engaging on the previous subject. We're talking about the Hellenization of African spiritual tradition, which then presupposes that the Greeks colonized Africa before they even came across Africa and introduced the concept of the logos, of the omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. Because anytime you hear Africans mention this thing, they're intimating the Greek metaphysics into African space, and with an idea that these ideas existed in Africa before. So I understand that slavery caused us a serious identity crisis. But in the process of reclaiming our identity, we need to be honest with our identity, because we are doing ourselves disservice by this syncretism, this miscegenation, this melting pot, this mingle of. That is why I don't subscribe to those things of the Anunnaki. That the Anunnakis were black people, they were Anu is Bantu. I don't do that, you know. So anything that is African must found its footprint. It must still have its evidence of its origin in Africa. Like, for instance, when we make the claim, when Sheikh Anta Diop make the claim in this book, The General History of Africa, it contained the report of the 1974 Cairo conference, where Sheikh Anta Diop and others had to prove the African origin of Egypt. He used linguistics that he showed that within the Wolof and there are similarities between Wolof and the language of ancient Egypt as recorded in the Medunata. And then he showed also through the mummy, carbon dating. He took a piece of a mummy and it showed the melanin content that the Egyptians were truly black. But also, you get more pyramids as you go into Africa. You get more pyramids in Sudan than in Egypt. So it shows you the evidence of this thing that the more you get into Africa, the more you get these ideas and evidence in abundance. So if these ideas were to be found among Botswana, almost every second nation among the Botswana, Bumangwatu, Bo Bakhatla, Bungwaketsi, and so forth, they should be able to still have those remnant of elders of Shabazz, 12 tribes of Shabazz, the 10 initiation system, which are only focusing on the child development instead of the whole society development, the 144,000, they should be able to point them that these are how you can even identify it among the Botswana. Otherwise, we are helping those who say our ancestors were primitive, so they did not yet evolve to that knowledge, when that knowledge is not even African indigenous knowledge system. It's something that came with the Africans in America. And which is understandable because Africans in America is Africans who are de-tribalized, deculturalized, de-linguisticized through transatlantic slave trade. They were uprooted from Africa. They are put in an environment where they now have to pick up things to identify with Africa. Like what we were saying, the example we gave about the first man who talked about Nyabingi was this Frederico Filos, and those who wanted desperately hard to identify with Africa, they will pick up that and run with it. And also Farad Muhammad, he come and tell Elijah Muhammad, who was a Gaviite, by the way. Elijah Muhammad was a Gaviite, used to follow Marcus Garvey. So therefore, the foundations of blackness was already laid by one of the black leaders, Marcus Garvey. So when he was coming from Garvey movement, out of Garvey movement came a lot of movement, including Nation of Islam. They came out of Garvey movement. So they took that, but they can't stomach everything. You know, Rastafari movement also came out of that. Leonard Howell used to be part of the Garvey movement, but Garvey was not talking about Rastafari. So he had to break away. So Farad Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, Garvey was not talking about Allah. So he was a Christian. So he had to break away from that. So they are breakaway tradition, but they are fundamentally rooted in a people who has lost their identity and who are seeking an identity and recreating another identity in the name of Africa, which is not necessarily African.
Yes, that is true. That's what I try to explain in all the phenomenon, explaining the ways, how they can find themselves in Egypt. Because in the Egyptian men are like going to the elder Cheka Diop. Cheka Diop uses the Arabian perspective of what is Egypt. And the Arabian perspective, we can get it from Al-Aziz, Mustafa, Kadala.
And just a minute there, just a minute, you'll continue, just stick a pin there. Also, in terms of Sheikh Anta Diop, remember Sheikh is a priest in Islam. So that is why in his writing, you'll talk about the Islamic origin of, the Kemetic origin of Islam.
Yes.
Because he's biased to that. What we're saying that knowledge is not conceptually neutral. Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan wrote with the black Jews because originally it's a falasha. So you have to ultimately claim that. Yeah, but continue.
That is why I wanted to correlate these masters and academical teachers who correlate like Mustafa Kadafa, who read historical deception.
Yes.
And in historical deception, he correlate Egyptian phenomenons with Christianity in order to try to say Christianity has adapted it from Egypt. So whatever we are practicing it in Christianity, it's still the same thing. It doesn't matter. They just change the names and put a little bit problem. So that itself, it's a creation of wrong world. The world, I don't say they are wrong, but a world of confusion towards the knowledge system. The knowledge system, how it originated, it has traditional knowledge system. The Sashu Mensi in Egypt, or Umelusi. Usashu Mensi. Umelusi, it means a shepherd. means someone who's working in the folklore, taking care of the livestock. Even in our tradition, we have people like that to take care of the livestock, who don't have much to deal with the internal domestic politics of that house, because they had to take care of the livestock of that same family. So the Sashuades, them, it may mean eagle, but to the origin of the word, it doesn't mean eagle. They choose the eagle because it's one of the symbols used within the traditional knowledge system of the Bantu. So the black root science, it has what we call contemporary echoes of Eastern knowledge system that is not familiar to Western knowledge. Like when we talk about Orthodox being the opposite of the Catholic, because majority are familiar with the Catholic knowledge system and the Protestant knowledge system, they're not familiar with the Orthodox, Russian Orthodox. Exactly if you talk about Honorable Putini producing a black Jesus Christ, because that is the Orthodox perspective of painting the old assumption of what Jesus may look like from all the conferences, economical conferences that were made by the Orthodox Church. So their last conclusion was that Jesus Christ or Jesus Christos will be dark in skin. Hence why they could correlate Egyptian knowledge system with their Christianity. Majority of Egyptologists like Champollion, like Pritchard, all of them, they have to learn from the Orthodoxian and interpret what the Orthodox are saying. So the knowledge of the black root science traces from that academical view, where it uses such understanding and claim to be African. Because we can get Orthodox in Africa with their teaching from Libya, we can get it in Morocco, we can get it in Egypt as the Coptica, and then we can get it in Ethiopia as the Orthodoxan or Tawahido Orthodox. So all these institutions, all of them work along with European. As I've said, the Tipi work with a European, or Sulman with the wall of family, they work with a European. Hence, Czech Adiopio will use the wall of language to acclaim that it correlates with Egyptian system, because that was the benchmark for the who you call Champollion, benchmark for Pritchard. That was a benchmark for even itself Antonius Athenia in Antonius Delamere or Antonia Altolonia, who was a archbishop and the Pope, the African Pope. So we can get that same ascensions, ideologies being said by the same Christian member. But since are forgotten into human history and academia, then they are used as something that is new, something that is rebelling against European, whereas it correlates with European. Yes, it had a clash. If people want to know this clash, they need to learn about Eastern and the Western, East-West basis clashes that were made by Christianity. The Eastern Christianity and the Western Christianity. They had their own clashes or clashes of ideology. And some of the Eastern ideology were not recorded and known into academical view of Christianity. Majority of the people that know Christianity they don't know about Eastern views. So the nation of Islam, they are using such spaces like Sufism that was not known. Like Cheko Adipu was part of the Mahadi or Madhedre secret society in Africa who were representing the caliphate, Tipu, and the rest of the people who benefited from slavery in Africa.
Yes, no, give thanks. You know, when it comes to church iconography, like the Black Jesus, these things, like the first 3 popes were black. It's the same as saying the first black president of America. Obama was the first black president of America, but does not necessarily make America black, because for the first time, America has got a black president. So the first 3 pope does not necessarily make Catholic African. The painting of the Black Jesus does not necessarily make Jesus black or Christianity black. This you go back to ancient ancient art form expression, where some of those statues of Rome, why do they show them naked and mostly with small manhood? It was because of, they say, the small manhood represent a menace, behavior type of thing. And then the elongated manhood, they will say it represent rudeness, all of that. And then also the covering, you had statues that are covered. Also the covering was about being civilized, being moral and all of that.
Moral ethics of Christianity.
Ethics of Christianity and so forth. So even with the black iconographies, the black paintings of Christ, in Brazil, I went to Panama last year for a conference, RALAC, Rastafari Ancient Culture, Levity, something they call it RALAC. I went to Panama for 14 days, January last year. We went to a place called Portobello. At Portobello, everybody was making hypes about, we are going to show you Black Jesus. But when we reached there, it was just a black Caucasian. The features are Caucasian. Like the structure, like you know how the white men look like, but only painted black. So like mostly like the pictures of the Ethiopian Jesus or the Black Christ of Ethiopia. Is a Greek painted black. That one is a black Caucasians. But also this black does not speak to the blackness of their culture and the blackness of that spiritual practice. It had other metaphysical and theological reasons that black then symbolized divinity. That is before the white man. Because in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, everybody was painted black except the devil. The devil was painted white. All the pictures of the church for thousands
all
of
the
years,
saints are black.
all the saints were black. Everybody was black. The devil was only white. Just like in white supremacy system. Everybody in the Bible is white. The devil is black. So the color of the white Jesus spoke to, in the context of white supremacy racism, which began in 1492, with then 1611, the Pope commissioned the painting of Jesus as a white man, was speaking to white supremacy ideals. And then the painting of the black Jesus was not speaking to black supremacy ideals. We're speaking to when divinity was considered to be black. Like we talk about in the origin, in the beginning was black. Even the Bible says so. In the beginning, there was darkness. And then the Spirit of God was moving around darkness. So they portray God as hanging in a thick darkness. They portray when divinity was associated with darkness before white supremacy came and started to demonize everything black. And they wrote in their dictionary, black male, black magic, black market, black sheep of the family, black this, black that, and everything white. They start to write white as angel, white as pew, white as right, and all of that. So they had context to that. So when our people today, they say, oh, Putin came with a black picture of Jesus. He wasn't saying that, it wasn't necessarily meaning to say that Jesus was an African, but it was the symbols of that time, the church iconography, when that time the Orthodox churches in particular, Ethiopian Orthodox Church, Greek Orthodox Church, all these Orthodox churches, when they had paintings, even most of them, they have these dagger images of divinity, because divinity even in the Bible was associated with darkness, that his feet are like a burning brass, his hair is like a pure wool, all of that. But they talk about its metaphors, because the Bible was not written in the layman's language. So it was not literal. So you can't put literal translation of the Bible. That is why when I was studying theology in Ethiopia, you study for 8 years to translate the Bible. 4 years Old Testament, 4 years New Testament. It's called Tirgum, translation. So when they say to you, Jesus walked on top of the water, they'll tell that water is the people. So to say he was walking on top of the water was basically a metaphor of his spiritual elevation was above normal people. So now when you're taking something that was written in metaphors, in similes, in allegory, something that is subject to translation, that is why there is theology studies, that you go to theology college to learn the translation of this thing that was not written in the layman's language. And you come today, you translate it literally, say the first 3 popes were black. So therefore it means what? Catholicism is a black thing, because the first 3 popes were black. Apartheid was made in South Africa. So what? Does it mean apartheid is an African concept? You know, because of it was developed here. You know, Maburu, the originator here. Siburu is the only language, is a European language that is not spoken in Europe. You only speak it here. Understand? So does it make it African? No. It's an ideas that black people developed then, decide to paint Jesus black. It's things that started in the Western Hemisphere. They started to paint Islam black. They started to paint the Israelites black based on those interpretations of the black things. Like Ethiopia, for instance. In the ancient world, Ethiopia symbolized great virtue. In the stories of Zeus, the travels of Zeus and the Greek gods, the Olympians, they traveled to Ethiopia for 15 years, every day, the last week of July, attending a thing called the Table of the Sun, which is symbolized by Injera. And when Injera is round like that, is a feast of the Table of the Sun. Until on the 15th year, the Greeks decided to vomit on the tables when they're eating, and then the Ethiopians banned them. They say, "Alena table manners." You must know
with the lack of etiquette.
Lack of etiquette. So the ancient world, the Greeks and Romans used to worship Ethiopians or used to see God in black. That is why you go to India, Buddha is black. You go to India, Krishna is black. It's even called perfect black. Because the ancient world used to identify blackness with divinity. That is why even in Bungoma, the highest level of Bungoma, which is Isinguni, they were black, completely black. Because black then was associated with divinity. Not to say that, because you have Buddha painted black, so therefore Buddhism is a black religion. No, it's a religion of India. Krishna is an African religion because Krishna is painted black or he looked black. No, it's a religion of India. As long as it is developed there, tainted by that environment and everything, the consciousness that went into building it is from that particular environment.
You know, when you talk about black, we're taking it back to black root science.
Yes.
That all this blackness that was seen in the old, it doesn't mean it was religiously viewed because they learned the mysteries from dark-skinned people. And then these same dark-skinned people are the one who integrated the mysteries in Europe. That is why we can find the remnants or the existence of dark-skinned people in Europe, Asia, and everywhere, and the origin of the Bantu systems. All of that has created what we call the insurgency or emergency within the black community of America, since they were oppressed by the racial system, because the black root science, it tore along the lines like that, where it separates racial connotations, that the black skin is superior than the white skin. The same basis that was used in Ethiopia, the same basis what was used in Coptic, truthfully, that they painted the devil more whiter, and they painted majority of the saints and what appears
practically everybody
Jesus
in the Bible
black.
Black.
But now what they have view in this case, it's not the black of racial administration or racism, meaning the old world was racist and it chose black people to administrate the economical affairs or social affairs or educational affairs. But it is only to understood the necessity of the melanin and the importance of the melanin. These are scientific studies that are recently found, that which means the old people understood the black melanin and its importance, and how it was highly equivalent to what we call neuromelanin activation. And neuromelanin can be activated to access the Akashika in the layman term, to access even other 411 and database of explaining historical existence and traditional practice and why it was necessary to practice those traditions. So in this case, the black root science didn't took everything that passed through as the oral tradition and the tradition that is passed through tribally or family-wise and nation-wise in the Bantu community. But they have took through what we can call the slavers who have been the admixtures from the Abbasid who came in the 9th century to the Huren who failed in the 6th century when he wanted to come inside Africa, to Azazel or Aziz, who came in the 1st AD through Kurat or Gurmalet in Ethiopia, who became the dynasty of Ethiopia and splendor and loot from the Ottoman Empire, from, I mean to say not the Ottoman Empire, from the Benzenite Empire that was controlled by the Romans known as the Eastern Roman Empire. So all that is a story that involves black people and their admixture, how they break through and lose their glory. But there's some other admixture who kept connection with the European, like Dracula, Vlad Dracula III, who became now the necessary tool of the European to exterminate the black culture in Arabia. Hence why he's known as the Impaler and all that. Because he had to fight Mehmet II. Mehmet II was defending the interest in the 14. We get those stories in the 12th century, where we get the fight of Mehmet and Dracula defending the interest of the Roman in the Eastern Roman Empire known as the Syrian Empire. So the stories of the Black Roots traces from that origin, but when they found themselves in the spaces of the world of democracy, we can call it like that, since America wants to call it itself like that. They found themselves that saying that we have a right to express our religion, but this religion has a black identity. It has a black face. Because when you go to the archive and the records of the Moorish or Iberian Peninsula, Mahat Iberian Spanua, you can get the conquest of Spain having the black identity, meaning these blacks were used by the Caliphate to go and conquer Spain. So the legends and the sagas became the normalities that can be passed through to the diasporian who came as slave chattels in America when they get their liberation, because the only literature they could access, it's a literature that adores God, meaning either it talks about Allah, either it talks about Yahweh, either it talks about Jesus, then that's a literature they can recognize. That is why some others, they can recognize battles that were fought in Makuru or the Makara battles in the 600 AD, known as the Togola Wars, fighting with Testamenan. All those wars were based on the same wars, where in foreign traditions were introduced to the Bantu people. Hence why they created in the Togola War the Bad system. The Bad system is one of the peace treaty that makes what we call collaboration and comparative of the studies of the Bantu to the Trite-Apameric religion, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. You can get that, the Togola War and the Party Treaty. All that created a space now of expression that we can correlate this traditional knowledge system to Christianity, Judaic, or Islam. And then it may have a space that it never was criticized when it reached the Americans. When the Americans inherited it, they inherited it with the hype and the mentality of the European. How they were hyped that, oh, we oppress black people, but black people have a space in the origin of our tradition, religious tradition, and knowledge system, Abrahamic religions as per se. So this itself, it is how Black Roots science get to be created. It is created in a space of emergency where black people want to identify themselves in the idea of God creating the whole universe and becoming part of God. Hence why in our African knowledge system, we say, oh, either this God exists or not exists. Since he exists, we image exactly as God image. When God appear, we appear. When God created, we are there to help God to create.
Okay. Actually, adding on this thing of images black, to call something black because it is called black, like Black Roots science. Because we were harassed a lot about it, People will be like, why are you not quoting it? Why do you know it? Why are you not reading it? Why don't you teach its doctrine? But you're thinking, okay, look, we represent a different school of thought. We don't deal with religious syncretism. We don't deal with a fusion of non-African traditions. Like coming with these things of these gods who go around and be appointed as black. Like, for instance, let's talk about those who are involved in the Indian traditions, whether it be Buddha, it be Krishna, it be Shiva, it be Rama, whoever, always depicted black. Is that to show the example of that, all this knowledge system, they develop it in the language of those people. That is why it is Sanskrit. Yoga is a Sanskrit word. Even people can tell you, oh, it comes from Egypt, but the word itself tell you where it comes from. Because if you can't name it, you can't claim it. You should have it in your culture to have a name for it. So now, even the Africans who went there to build this thing, they built it based on the language and the environment and the practices of the people. Because it's only environment like India that will give birth to belief system like Buddhism and Hare Krishna, Hinduism, and so forth. It also speaks to the environment. And then we get to also this tradition of taking things that are not African and claim them to be. As we're explaining that you have the black culture and you have the African culture. And the black culture is this thing that black people developed outside of Africa as a response to colonialism and slavery. Now, you must remember that, like we say, Rastafari is a response to colonialism and slavery. Black Root Science is a response to colonialism and slavery. Nation of Islam is a response to colonialism and slavery. If there was no colonialism and slavery, there wouldn't be a Rastafari movement. There wouldn't be Nation of Islam. There wouldn't be no African Christians. There wouldn't be the concept of the true Hebrews or the true Israelites. Because what are you measuring true against? You have to come up and point something and say it's false. But all of these things that you say is false, which you are coming with a true version of it, when people respond into something, they are controlled by the forces that they respond. So they always require white Christianity to be more racist in order to come with the black Christianity. They always require black Islam to be more racist for them to come with the black Islam, their version of it. So even Black Root Science is a response to white root science, whereby it's responding to a white science that is advocated by the likes of Madame Blavatsky, what they call theosophy, and other literatures that are rooted in white supremacy, racism, and white supremacy, understanding of metaphysics and science and numerology and Greek astronomy and Greek ideas of the ether system, the spirit, divinity, and so forth. They highly influence this tradition, and then they start to try to create the black version of them, and which is important in intellectually separating the two, to separate this. I know I once offended people, said, this is a black thing, it's not African. They say, what do you mean? You mean we're not African? I'm saying, I don't say you're not African. But if you know Africans also, Africans don't define themselves in terms of black like that. Although one part of Africa, one country in Africa used the name black, like Kemet. Kemet means black. But Kemet is also a source of debate that is referring to the black soil of Egypt, which was caused by the inundation of the Nile River. But in terms of us, abantu besithi umuntu, abantu abantsundu, dark brown people, not black as in the black they were saying. We're saying Nubia or Nuba, which means golden people. What we call yellow bones today, in ancient time we will say they are Nuba or they are Nubians. They will be like, oh, this sister, she's Nubian, instead of saying like yellow bone, because all bones are yellow anyway. No matter how dark you are, if you go and check, your bone is yellow. So these are trivial, dysfunctional psychological tendencies coming out of the European sociology that you will just say yellow bone. But when then we're talking about a fair-skinned black person, it will be in that context of gold, it's golden, But also the general definition of us was abantu abansundu, which is the root for Basotho, mutu omusoto, dark brown person. So this color claim or this color combination, we need to do it and claim it within context. Like if we're going to say Buddha was black, but is Buddhism fundamentally black? Christ was black. Is Christianity fundamentally black? Why there is no any African spiritual expression that is the same like it? Why is you don't see it replicated somewhere? Even in Egypt, where they try to say it was copied there's fundamental differences. There is fundamental differences between Horus and Jesus. And there's fundamental differences between Osiris and Jesus. Whichever school of thought it goes we go by to identify this. So we also touched on the initiation system, which is claimed to be coming from the Botswana. But when you look at that, the 10 initiation system of Botswana are different. But with the last 10 minutes, I would like us also to touch on the protocols of the elders of Shabazz.
Okay, when we go to like same as the protocols, because you have already touched on that. The Ethiopians, they talk about the indecency or ill behavior of the Greeks. The ill behavior of the Greeks, we can get it in historical context from Philadelphia II. Philadelphia II, known as Ptolemy III. Ptolemy III came to Ethiopia. He was invited. The Ptolemies had a chance to always be invited in Ethiopia rather than only Egypt, because they had what we call amusement for Ethiopia. So when they were invited there, they had their tradition. It's a known tradition even in Italy, in Turkey. You can find it where they throw plates down and celebrate that. So they have their tradition. It's commonly known to them. And then they vomited and do all those things. It was their tradition. But it was indecent for the founders of the tradition of Ethiopian system. That is why it started a quarrel within Ethiopia, where Ethiopians either they agree with the Ptolemy or not. So some of them migrated down to the south without going to the history of the family matters. But now, this same story, it talks about the 10 laws or the 10 systems or the 10 initiation. Because one of the first initiation is your control of your thoughts. When you can control your thoughts, you cannot just react in any form. You cannot just do anything. The second initiation is control of your actions.
Emotions.
Your actions is your reaction. And your actions are embodied by your emotions. So all that didn't pass through just only one day. You needed a precision of time in order to control all those things and to understand the chemistry and the knowledge and the subjects that you need to learn about yourself on how to adapt and master such a system. So the 10 initiation were not only talking about what is written in the Black Root Science, but they were talking about ethics that you have already identified within the Greeks. They failed in the Ethiopia. They were talking about the ethics that we have already identified within the Hyksos who have failed in Egypt when we trace it back in the old time before Christianity. And then they were talking about the same system of the ethic that is applied even now to understand the divinity of nature, to express nature. Because when you don't understand that you live with the tree and the tree is like you have lacked the ethic of conduct of understanding the tree and communicating with tree, and the tree divulging knowledge to you, or the stars divulging knowledge to you. So all of that was embedded in those principles. And those principles have rite and rituals of passage in order for you to master the self.
No, it's true. You see, you actually make a very important point of the 10 stages or 10 requirements of a student in ancient Egypt for one to be admitted into the mistress and be initiated. Is that control of thoughts, control of emotions, control of action, and then a faith in your teacher to teach you the truth, faith in yourself to assimilate knowledge, faith in yourself to possess knowledge, free yourself from resentment, under persecution, free yourself from resentment under the experience of wrong. So all of these were preparatory requirements, just like the three things that you'll be asked from the beginning, that what is the creature that begins life with 4, go through 2, and end with 3? By knowing that answer, you are beginning to know the basis of your initiation, that creature is a human being. You start on 4, we are khas, and then you went through 2, and then you end with 3, with the third leg, which is this stick, which bring us back to number 9, because 9 is a sacred number among the Bantu from Nyakato to Ningizim. When I say Nyakato, I'm talking about Kemet now. From Kemet to Ningizim here, 9 is sacred. We go to the 9 tribes of Kikuyu, where Kikuyu had 9 daughters, who then required to have husbands. And then they were told that go and pick up yourself a stick of your choice and your size, and then come back, and then they put them in the fire in the morning. That is the husband of your choice. Then we talk about the 9 gods of ancient Kemet, the Enid, and also the Ogdot. One is a Heliopolis cosmology. The other one is a Memphite cosmology. The other one have the Enid. The other one had the Ogdot. And then it goes again to the 9 components of the soul. It goes again to the 999 principles that they have, that at the end of the day, even the 144,000 we talk about, is in terms of numerology, is 1 plus 4, which is 5, plus 4, which is 9, plus 0, which is 9, plus 0, which is 9, plus 0, which is 9. So the 144,000 is that all numbers within the context of numerology must boil down to 9. The 3 set of 3, which also in Black Root Science, Mudimun should talk about them, that the first 3 being the Father, the Son, and divinity. And then the other 3 being the Mother, the Daughter, and divinity. And the other 3 being the doer, the knower, and the energy. All of that. But they're using that formula of numerology of 3 by 3, because it's the only number that multiplies itself within itself. 3 by 3. So they found divinity in that. And even in the Bantu calculation was that 10 is a repetition of the number. You have him 1 plus 0. 0 is nothing. You are going back to 1. So numbers begin with 1 and end with 9. And that is why everything had to do with 9 was a sign of completion. The 9 months we stay of incubation, we stay in our mother's womb. The 9 numbers that you arrive at, like even the 226 descendancy line of Solomon. If we talk about the 226, the 200 is what, 225th, the Solomonic dynasty, is 2 plus 2, which is 4, plus 5, which is 9. So in terms of numerology, if you are using numerology to check for authenticity, is that it must ultimately boil down to the ultimate sacred number, which is 9. It is it's Abrahamic religion that emphasizes 7 as a number of completion, which is what he's saying in the Black Root Science, that 7 is a number of completion and so forth. But otherwise, it's 9. Is 7, we have 9 holes to enter our body. 7 on your face and 2 on your body down there, which is like your 2 eyes, your 2 nostrils, your 2 ears, and your 1 mouth. Is 7. But this is not complete, because you need to have the penis hole and the anus hole to have that, or the vaginal hole and the anus hole to have that 7 ways to enter, 9 ways to enter a person. That is why 9 is a number of men, is a number of completion. So it is Judeo-Christian, it's Abrahamic religion to say 7 is a number of completion, is a holy number. But they take it from their own paganism, like the 7 days of the week, which are named by the 7 gods. But if you come to us, it's 9. You know, like we say from the gods, our first god, the gods of the primordial of noon are 9. Is Atum, and then Tefnut, and Shu, and Geb, and Nut or Ntu, and then Asaras, Horus, Isis, Nephthys. So they are all 9. And then you go to the 9 gods of eternity. You were showing Indaba, my children, earlier.
Yes.
And Zulu Shaman, actually, in Zulu Shaman here, Mkulu Credo Muta also here in the Zulu Shaman. Mkulu Credo Muta talk about the 9 gods of eternity. What do we call Bakulu?
Yeah,
this thing we always say Abakulu. Or Gaspiril Bagulu.
Yeah, without stopping you, when
9 gods of eternity.
In Sumer, they are called Apkulu. In Hawaii, the Kauna system, the Big Brotherhood, they say Abakulu. So these 9 Abakulu, it same apply to the Black Roots, because it talks about 1.9 billion,
yes, 1.8
billion,
which is 1
the
plus 8.
ultimatum number of the people who must exist here and divinely chosen. So that goes back and boils itself to Kabbalistical 9.
Yes. But we are going to wrap up. Maybe final observation that we might have overlooked. We were to talk about the protocols of the elders of Shabazz, but that is basically another copy from the protocols of the elders of Zion, which is now about the Jewish conspiracy to dominate the world. And then the 12 tribes of Shabazz is also another copy of the 12 tribes of Israel. It's a regurgitation of different traditions, just same like the Bible, how people will point that certain things were taken from the Epic of Gilgamesh. So certain things come from the Sumerian text, the oracles of Adipa, Sargon of Akkad, the story of Adam and Eve, and so forth, is stuff that were copied from there. So what Black Root Science really, for me, having read it, analyze it, and for years, because it's not now, it's been in circulation, and all these woke people always make reference to it or recommend it or even chastise us and say, why don't you spread the teachings of Black Root Science? It's Mudimunch, you have to do that. But I'm saying, I'm not going to teach as to advocate Christianity painted black. I'm not going to advocate Islam painted black. I'm not going to get Judaism painted black and claim that they are African when there's nothing African about them except that they come from Greco-Roman Sumerian metaphysics, including the very claim of the true Israelites. Abraham came from Iraq. Even according to the Bible, he came from Ur of the Chaldees by the river Euphrates, and so he was an Arab, understand, who migrated into Africa around 1675 BC, the same time the Hyksos came into Kemet. So there was that movement of the Asiatic coming to Kemet, which are called the Habiru or the Hebrews. With this last 3 minutes, your final word, Mkhulu.
As you have talked about the Hapiru known as the Pandoweri in Ethiopia, they're known as the Melusi, the shepherd people. So the shepherd people, that is why they have shepherd heroes as their heroes biblically and in all their legends. So the Black Root Science doesn't correlate to African knowledge system. It is far highly limited because it takes 108,000 millions to go to the moon light years. And 108,000 million of those light years is same as number 9, the ultimate number. The same step you can find in Tlacoacho in the Aztec civilization, and even in the Bura Madok. So all that, it traces itself from the coronation of understanding the universe and knowing the movement of the universe, not on religious belief or only chosen body. But the true within the Black Root Science is that there's some species that can be extinct because of nature adapting to its different forms. That we have learned it even to Charles Edwin, the evolutionary study. Though we don't agree with him, but we can see it in evolutionary dynamics. That there's things that are getting extinct in this nature. Ashe.
That was our conversation with Mkhulu Zamalek Giza on Unpopular Opinion about Black Root Science, Mudimunchu, and Nation of Islam, like elements that went into Black Root Science. This is our observation, of course. This is our view. This is our analysis based on our reading. We don't expect everyone to see it the same way or to agree with our observation, but this is our own observation informed by our own learning and our own exposure and our own reading. You must go and read it yourself, arrive at your own conclusion, informed by whatever inform you. What we say here is not necessarily gospel truth. What we say, we are not claiming to say we know all the truth or we know we are the only one who's right. No, we are just sharing our own unpopular opinion on unpopular opinion. So it's all unpopular opinion. Don't make religion out of it. Don't make a mountain out of a mole. This is just us dissecting and unpacking the Black Root Science. There have been a lot of people calling that we should talk about it, we should explain it, and so forth. Our reading of it has brought us to this conclusion. Ralebo, Shatomo, Tobel.
Ashe.